true crime podcast where best friends and next-door neighbors, Willow and Lillian, spill the tea on murder, mysteries, and other things that go bump in the night. So get your favorite teacup ready, and let's get into it. Welcome to Cruelty Podcast. This is Lillian, and with me is Willow.
Hello.
Hello. I put on my radio voice
You
just
did.
then.
We're on the radio.
Well, I don't know anything. I'm dumb as hell. It's still Forensic Firsts.
Yes.
And it will be for the rest of the month.
That's right. That's
how the
it's
themes
done.
work. That's right. And I know because you just told me we're doing fingerprints today.
Fingerprints.
For your fingies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Phalanges.
Phalanges.
I love that word.
Do you?
Oh, I love that word.
It's a stupid word.
It is, but it's great. Mm-hmm.
You can love it. I don't know why I don't like it.
Phalanges.
I don't want to call them that. I'm going to call them fingies. Because isn't it phalanges in your toes as well? I don't want my floor grippers.
Never mind. I lost it.
I don't want my floor grippers associated with my hands. Keep them nasty things away from me. Mm-hmm. I'm not a big fan of foots.
I don't like the feet.
Nope. Keep them away. Nasty,
Not a feets
nasty.
person. But I am this close to selling my feet pictures.
Do it.
I'm about to. And if y'all are out there selling foot pictures, good for you. You know, good for you.
Keep at it.
You just keep doing it.
You know, I should. I have very darling little feet.
I've got a great arch. I got dancer feet.
Do you?
I could smush some cake with these babies. Hell yeah.
Maris should do it. Maris has weird feet. They're like hands. He has like prehensile toes. They're really
nervous
creepy
feet, too.
Yeah, they are. He expresses himself with his feet. That's weird.
So yeah, no feet in this episode. Just hands.
None. Just hands.
Just your hands. Although I think the foot ridges on your feet are just as unique as
They are.
fingerprints.
They have gotten barefoot footprints.
It's just not as common because most people, when they're committing crimes, wear shoes.
Yeah. So you hear that? Wear shoes when you're committing a crime.
No, because there's shoe evidence, shoe print.
Wear
evidence.
socks.
There was a killer that did wear socks in their home. Mm-hmm. I forgot which one that was. It was a famous serial killer.
Sock-footed killer.
She's canceled. We're canceling her.
You can cancel me. I'll go to Pennsylvania. I don't give a shit.
So we're talking about fingerprints today, and I wanted to go ahead and get the trigger warnings out of the way. Not too many. I don't really go into too deep of a description other than a description of the murder of children and a terrorist attack featuring bombings. So I know that can be really triggering and scary. So just giving a heads up about that. So yeah, fingerprinting, which I didn't realize. I guess I never really thought about like really in depth about how old fingerprint, like even just the observation of our fingerprints would be, but it actually goes back pretty far in history. The Chinese were the first that we know to have used fingerprints or friction ridge impressions, which I really like that term, as a way of distinguishing people during the Qin Dynasty, 221 to 206 BC. So
damn,
that's a long fucking time ago.
They made spaghetti first. They was using fingerprints.
Girl, they are very intelligent. Very intelligent civilization. Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Well, they got tons of years on us, so.
That's true.
But yeah, it's not exactly clear like how much they knew about exactly how unique each fingerprint was, or if they used it to like strictly identify people in crimes. But they did use it as signatures to authorized documents as well as maker's marks in pottery, which I find absolutely fascinating. But so did a lot of people around that time. I mean, as, you know, cultures and civilizations grew, more and more they started to get kind of obsessed with the uniqueness of fingerprints. Over the 17 and 1800s, you see many cultures using fingerprints as authorization methods, just like we use today, like with our phone. Mm-hmm. You know, like I can access my bank account with my fingerprint on my phone, and that is...
What a time to be alive.
If you told 10-year-old me...
that's some future shit.
Yeah. That's, Xenon Girl of the 21st Century type shit.
Oh my God, I can't believe you brought that movie up.
Sorry, it's one of my favorites.
It's so horrible.
Oh, yeah, it's great. So in 1686, a Dutch scientist named Govard Bidloo published a book called The Anatomy of Human Bodies, or Anatomia Humani Corporis.
Very good.
Thank you. It was really hard.
It was. I could see like a brain cell die, expended
Like a
with the
wilting
effort.
flower. Yeah, each petal fell as I tried. With this book specifically, I'm going to have a lot of pictures, probably too many pictures from this book.
Definitely.
In our photo section for this case on Patreon, because I actually took like a whole day just studying this book because I thought it was so fascinating, and I kind of nerded out about it. It's just really beautiful portraits of anatomical body parts and like dissections and things like that, but it's all engraved, like it's engraving style. So it's just ridiculously gorgeous, and I would love some of that art as tattoo. Like, that is just gorgeous to me.
Yes.
So his work is considered to be the first to have ever analyzed the fingerprint as part of the body, as an actual body part, and to indicate the different ridges and loops and categorize the different types. There's things called islands, there's things called there's all different kinds of names for the different types of ridges and the way that they're forming, and I don't know, it's just absolutely fascinating. So he didn't actually indicate in his work that each person's fingerprint was unique, so we don't quite know how specific fingerprinting is, but we at least know some classifications at this point. In 1823, another anatomist wrote a thesis about the 9 distinct patterns of human fingerprints. And again, there's still not any reference of how unique or how this could be used, but these are just kind of the original building blocks of the evolution of what we know as the information on fingerprints. Sir William Herschel is historically credited for his work on fingerprint research, which, by the way, I did take kind of a side quest on just his family history because he was really fascinating. So his father, Sir John Frederick William Herschel, was an astronomer and a chemist, a mathematician, an inventor, and an experimental photographer. And he was really, really exciting to kind of dive into. He invented the blueprint.
Oh, wow.
I'm not going to say this word right, but it's like cyan, like the cyanotype. Is that how you say it? Or is
Cyan.
it cyan? Mm-hmm. Cyanotype.
Cyan. Cyan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that bluey color.
It's a blue-greenish
bluish color. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He developed his own type of photography and coined the word photography in 1839. Which, as you know, most of you listeners don't know out there, but I'm going into colloid like tintyping, and Lillian and I have been talking about tintyping for years.
Yes.
So it's kind of, I don't know, it's adjacent to what we're going through right now. He also worked with all kinds of research and created many inventions involving the light spectrum and various salts and devices involved in photo developing, which I find that fascinating. He also wrote to the New York Sun a series of satiric articles about animals that lived on the moon, including cat-like winged humanoids, and people thought this was real, and he just kind of like, it's just great. He trolled people before trolling was a thing. Now, he was the son of Frederick William Herschel, who was the first president of the Royal Astronomical Society. He discovered Uranus, infrared...
Yeah. I'm allowed these jokes for not talking about crime.
We'll get to the crime. He also developed he discovered infrared radiation and would do these like deep sky surveys where he'd take these giant like state-of-the-art telescopes for the time and would sit and observe our galaxy, which he discovered over 2,400 objects that he defined as nebulae, which we would later understand were astronomical objects throughout our galaxy, but galaxies wouldn't have even been discovered for another 100 years. So it's really interesting that this one guy that really hyperfixated on fingerprints comes from a whole line of men who have hyperfixated on things in our world that usually we would kind of just overlook, like, oh yeah, the sky is cool. But they're like, no, I want to know what the sky is. I want to know what all of these things are, and I want to develop things. I don't know. There's just kind of a brilliance of the mind that that was really strong at this time of discovery.
Yeah, I like that period in history because of all the different discoveries that were made, and
Isn't it
as we
brilliant?
headed into the Industrial Revolution.
I still cannot wrap my mind around how a pinhole camera works and how these salts work together to develop.
I don't know how anybody figured that shit out.
It's just amazing. I know it was an accident. The pinhole camera was discovered by accident. I think it was like a hole in a leaf or something, but just fucking, just so fascinating. So yeah, this guy, Sir William James Herschel, comes from a long line of these really great, really smart scientists, and it's only natural that he would view the world through this scientific lens. So his whole household is basically a scientific observation, right?
Yeah.
He grew up this way. So growing up, he noticed that each person in his family had different ridges on their fingerprints. And so he went around and documented everyone's fingerprints over the years. So his sisters, his cousins, his aunts, his uncles, his, parents, his grandparents. And he noticed that over the years, and including his own, because after he moved out, he continued to record his own fingerprints. And this scientific study right here showed that our fingerprints don't change.
That is right.
And just brilliant. Just brilliant. Because now it just, it's common knowledge, but for someone to have to think about this and question it, I would never have questioned this. I would have never thought about this.
Yeah,
It's
I probably
just,
wouldn't have either, to be honest.
Yeah, it's just not something I would have really spent much time or energy in. But because of these people, we are able to solve crimes today. And I don't know. I find their curiosity fascinating. So he was also allegedly responsible for the first practical use of the fingerprint. In 1858, he worked as a magistrate for the East India Company and throughout colonial India. He needed to recruit laborers to work for the company, but they were in India. He's an Englishman, he's an English speaker. So most of the citizens didn't speak in English or write in English. So whenever he had to drop these work contracts, he needed something to kind of bridge the language barrier there. And so he had his new employees sign their name using their handprint. He later became a British officer in Bengal, India, and he would use fingerprints and handprints for pensions, for deeds, and jail warrants as a way to prevent fraud. He proved it to be so useful that other people across the globe started to utilize this method and do the same thing. And it really did work. It really did clear up a lot of, clerical errors that could have gone really wrong and awry. The language barrier there, the fact that there's no disputing that. I think that's beautiful. So around this exact same time, in the late 1870s, a Scottish doctor named Henry Faulds was on an archaeological site with a friend of his in Japan, and he noticed that as the people were digging in this clay-like mud, that the diggers' hands were leaving behind little prints. And as he looked at them, he noticed they all looked different. And so he began studying them. He just got really, fixated on this and really zoned in. So he went back home and he started studying this, and with the intention of finding a way to prove that each person's hand and fingerprints were unique. Now, during his study, the hospital he worked at was broken into. Dr. Faulds did not think that the person they had arrested for this burglary, he didn't think that he had done it.
That's interesting.
So while he's studying fingerprints, right, and while he's trying to say, no, they are so unique, I can prove it, here comes his proof. like literally right there, handed to him on a silver platter. So he set out to prove this man was innocent. He took impressions from his fingerprints and compared them to the ones found at the scene, and they did not match.
Oh, that's cool.
And he convinced the police to let them go.
That's amazing. I love that.
Isn't it? Dr. Faulds went on to write a thesis in a weekly illustrated scientific journal called Nature, and he tried to get help from Charles Darwin himself to promote this idea because he believed wholeheartedly, like so much in this, that he was like, Charles Darwin, that's my guy. He's going to get this done for me. But Darwin wasn't really into it. He was more into the monkeys, and
he was into beetles during this time.
Yeah.
He was traveling around the English countryside gathering up different kinds of beetles.
I love bugs and I love beetles. I think that's really fascinating.
But no, Darwin was like that. He would get on a kick and he just couldn't, like, he hyperfixated and he couldn't, like, get on anything else.
It's funny because, like, all of these, like, astronomers and scientists from
are
back
clearly
in the
neurodivergent.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
you're welcome, history. But yeah, so Darwin wouldn't do it, and he was too busy. So he passed the information to his cousin, Francis Galton. Now, he didn't respond. Galton didn't respond at all. So Dr. Faulds was like, fine, I'll go to Scotland Yard. So he knew that he was just on the brink of something really fantastic, which he was. So he told Scotland Yard that he would pay out of pocket for the entire project for him to start working on a fingerprint archive for them. He was like, I'll do this for free, and I'm going to start archiving all of your criminals' fingerprints because I can prove to you that this system works. But Scotland Yard was like, nah, that's cool. Because, like, all great new inventions and new discoveries, people are skeptical, and they ended up turning it down. They were using the Bertillon system, or also called anthropometry.
Yes.
Which included a series of photographs, descriptions, such as like birthmarks, scars, tattoo, eye color, hair color, those kinds of things. The photographs would be like a frontal view and a side portrait, just like our mugshots today, and a series of measurements. And these measurements were very specific and very strange looking at it now. Measurements like the width of the skull, the foot length, the cheek length, the cubit or the forearm, the wrist, the trunk when sitting down from base of your spine to your head, and the left foot and middle finger on your left hand. Like, these series of very specific measurements were supposed to identify people. And the idea behind this was that once you hit about 20 years old, your body stops growing.
That's generally true.
Generally, right? And then there's so many other things that can happen to a person during their lifetime that can change their body measurements.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah, it seemed doomed and faulty to begin with, but they really held on to this Bertillon system for a while.
Oh, I know they did. It's so silly.
Yeah. Now, they'd been using this since 1879, which was only a few years prior to this, so I don't know. I feel like they should have given the fingerprint a second chance, but to them, the Bertillon had worked, so why change things? In 1892, without any recognition or even mention of Dr. Henry Faulds, Charles Darwin's cousin, Francis Galton, released his breakthrough text called Fingerprints.
Oh, dicks.
What a fucking dick. Like, he just totally took all of his information.
Darwin was just like, sure, I'll look into it. I won't, though. Here, give it to my cousin instead. Fuck you. Wow.
That's like stealing somebody's, like, project.
It's very Edison Tesla of them.
That's what I wrote in my notes. I said, basically, he's the Thomas Edison of the fingerprint.
He is.
Yeah.
At least he didn't kill an elephant.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Thomas Edison.
I fucking hate him, too. But yeah, this breakthrough text called Fingerprints was outlining all the various types, ways that fingerprints are formed and made, what all the lines mean, and how no two fingerprint are the same. It also says that it's formed in the womb, and it talks about how, different things can happen while you're in the womb. Whether like your amount of amniotic fluid can do things to your fingerprint, the way that you're laying, the way that your body is positioned inside the womb, all different things can go into affect your fingerprint. It's wonderful. So yeah, the internet says that his book was published in 1982, but it doesn't actually say like what time of year it was published. So I'm not sure if it happened before or after this next event, because the same year that his text on fingerprints was released, the Francisco Rojas the Caballo case came out. So I don't know. It's just kind of one of those things where it's like most people want to, like, especially these guys, want to take credit for their work of brilliance when it could have been sparked by a ton of other things. So I'm wondering if this next case that I'm about to talk about sparked his release of the fingerprints so that way he looked,
yeah, maybe
more fantastical. Either way, it happened the same year, which I think is ironic. But the records were destroyed with time. So this is kind of one of those things where it's like, as the story goes kind of thing. There's really there's hardly any actual evidence or any case files from that time period. I do have her mugshots and her fingerprints are still here. So either way, on June 28th, 1892 in Argentina, a man named Ponciano Carballo came home after work to find his front door just wouldn't open. He unlocked it because it was locked, but when he pressed against the door, there was something against it. So he worried about his wife and children inside the house.
Like you would.
Of course. And so he ran next door to grab his neighbor, Mr. Velasquez. Now, the two men rushed over and were able to force the door open. There they found Ponciano's 27-year-old wife, Francisca Rojas de Caballo, on the floor in front of the door with a slash across her neck.
Terrible.
The door had been pried shut with a spade from the inside. Both of their children, 6-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl, were massacred in their rooms.
Oh.
Trigger warning. Both were stabbed multiple times, their heads nearly severed from their bodies.
God.
Yet somehow their mother survived having her throat slit. Ponciano immediately went for help, and soon officers arrived to their house, and Ponciano was in complete anguish. And Francisca was absolutely hysterical, too hysterical to be examined by doctors at that time. So they were able to actually kind of sit down and talk to her, though. And she was able to tell police that it was her next door neighbor, Senor Velasquez, that had just come over to help, that had actually been the intruder that night.
Oh, wow.
She said that when she got home later that day, she claimed that she saw Senor Velasquez escaping out the back door. She confronted him, and he bashed her head and slit her throat with a spade before shoving it in the door and running away. But Senor Velasquez says he was interrogated for hours, and I'm talking Argentina 1800s interrogations.
Yeah.
No restrictions there at all. He was interrogated for hours and hours and hours on end, and that man stood by his word saying that he did not do it, that he wasn't there that night. He was out drinking, and he had tons of friends that were there with him to corroborate. And they talked to his friends, and they all said it was true. He had a solid alibi. But even with a solid alibi, they kept him in jail because he was the only suspect at the time. So Francisca denied ever having anything to do with it. She said it was definitely him, but they were like, no. This whole thing just seemed really off. It seemed really fishy. Even when the doctors came to examine her a few days later, after her hysteria had calmed down, her shock had worn off, they found that she likely had not been hit in the head at all. There was no damage. There was no
contusions or anything.
Yeah. And trust me, I've had a lot of head injuries, you can tell, for a while.
Yeah, you sure can.
Yeah. And the cut on her neck was shallow, which was healing. The police found no other leads. The local police called the experts to evaluate the scene, and an inspector named Eduardo Alvarez led a team of investigators to kind of comb through the scene and see if they could find anything that maybe the original police officers had missed. He just knew something was wrong about this case. Something is off.
He had a hunch.
Absolutely. He talked to their suspect and obviously realized that that guy was not a suspect at all. Then he talked to Francesca and realized that her story didn't add up whatsoever. How was the door locked from the inside?
Yep, that's what got me.
Never a good clue. So he went back to the crime scene. His team searched the area again, and this time they found a bloody fingerprint on one of the children's bedroom doors. He had an entire section of that frame removed, and it was taken back to the station to be analyzed. They compared the fingerprint on the door frame to the fingerprints that they took from Senor Velasquez and Francisca and found that they had a match. This proved that Senor Velasquez was in fact innocent.
Hell yeah.
And that the children's mother, Francisca Rojas, was the killer.
Wow.
When police presented this information to her, she broke down sobbing, and she instantly admitted to her guilt.
Wow.
Now, a few sources say two different things. So there's two different basic stories as to why she committed this crime. A few sources say that she killed her children because her husband was going to take them away because it was inevitable that they were divorcing. And, back then you couldn't do anything without a husband. And it was kind of in retaliation. They mentioned that it was kind of in retaliation for her husband trying to take her children away as one of those, if you can't have, or if I can't have them, then you can't type situation.
Stupid. Yeah.
But most sources say that she actually had a lover.
That's what I was going to go with.
Yeah, and the lover didn't want her to have children. The quote was that her lover would marry her because, again, she wants to divorce her husband, but she needs to have a lover and a husband to go to after she divorces her husband.
Right, because she doesn't have any means of supporting herself.
Exactly. So she needed to make sure with her lover that he would marry her if she went through this divorce.
Right.
And he said, quote, not with those brats. So she...
Wow, that's cold.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, she said that she slashed her own throat right before she knew her husband would be coming home. So she timed it all out. And she sat there waiting for him to come home. Now, at that time in Argentina, women were exempt from capital punishment. So she wasn't sentenced to death. Doctors agreed that she was insane, at least for the time. On September 20th, 1894, she was taken into Dolores Penitentiary, where she would be housed until she died. There are no records as far as what time she died, but she was there till her dying breath.
Wow.
With this first conviction via fingerprint, now the world of forensics went wild. Scotland Yard finally adopted the practice in 1901. In 1903, the United States was made to transfer from the Bertillon system to the fingerprint method because of one very strange and bizarre case. Like, it's one of these things where it's like, is it real? It almost looks like one of those stories where it's like, oh, that has to be clickbait. Like, that can't be real. But it was real. And it's the reason why we had to turn away from the Bertillon system, because it proved that the Bertillon system didn't work. Now, this is the case of Will West versus William West. Have you heard of this?
I have not.
Fucking fascinating. I don't know why more people don't talk about this. So in 1903, a man named Will West was brought into Leavenworth Prison in Kansas. And upon booking him in, the clerk at the admissions desk recognized him. And they were like, how did you get out and then back in? And they were like, what? Like, no, this man is just now being arrested for the first time. Well, apparently, in Leavenworth Prison, they already had a criminal behind bars named William West, who had been incarcerated for 2 years prior to that in 1901, and he was serving a life sentence.
Oh, man.
And he looked identical to this man. Now I'm going to I want you guys to see this photo. I'll show you Lillian in a second, but oh my God. It looks like one of those photos where if you say things to someone and you capture their emotions of like their facial expressions, like mad, sad, happy, funny, those kinds of things. It just looks like William West normal and William West mad. That's what it looks like.
Wow.
But these are two completely different people. They are
like he had a doppelganger.
It is a doppelganger. Absolutely. Now, as an aside, there is talk that they could have possibly been identical twins, but because they are people of color, they are African American, that maybe they were separated at birth and just documents weren't held at that time, which I just find really sad. I would rather live in a fantasy world that they were just happy little doppelgangers and, that didn't happen. But we don't know for sure is what I'm saying. There's no physical paperwork that has withstood the test of time to say whether they are doppelgangers or actually identical twins that were separated. But this completely destroyed the Bertillon system because their measurements were almost identical. Like, I think their toes were like a couple millimeters off. But other than that, all of their measurements lined up perfectly. And the fingerprint evidence proved that they were two different people. And they were able to then categorize which one was Will West and which one was William West according to their fingerprints. Absolutely fantastic. And that's essentially what got the fingerprint system into prisons. Now, the weird thing is about this is that they kind of kept this a secret for like almost 20 years. It wasn't until the prisoner, like the prison guards or whoever was flaunting this new system of fingerprints, they used this story at a fair. And it wasn't until they used the story as at the fair to like kind of
hype it up.
Yeah. And make themselves look good like almost 20 years later.
World fairs would do things like this back in the day. So nowadays, state fairs, we all know we go in for the fried cheesecake, for the fried pickle, for the Indian taco, for the funnel cake. Yeah. That's why we go to the fair, right? We go to eat a bunch of weird food and have diarrhea.
Absolutely.
But back in the day, world fairs, state fairs, so the World Fair will travel to different cities. It was usually in Chicago. There was more than once it was in Chicago.
Right.
And this would showcase inventions, wild stories. So people will be like, you'll never believe what happened to me. Yeah. And then they'll tell a wild story. They had demonstrations.
Snake oil salesmen.
Out the butt. And then, it had every sort of thing, not just, in fact, it was light on the rides. Yeah. And it was more about things like hot air balloons and the latest, greatest this and that.
Absolutely.
And so this was likely featured in a World's Fair type environment, and that's what made the story go viral for back then.
Right. Exactly. No, you explained it way better than I could. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm just really into World Fairs. I have a hyperfixation.
I appreciate it 1,000%.
I find them really cool. I wish they still had them.
Yeah. I find it weird that it took the fair to kick off the fingerprint. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I find that a little interesting that it took that long instead of it just being implemented right away. But yeah, we got to remember too, especially with these forensic firsts this month. But when we talk about forensic sciences and when we talk about these true crime cases and convicting felons and all of this, and we talk about evidence, we need to realize that there are faults to DNA gathering. There are faults to fingerprint analysis.
Nothing's
there are
perfect.
faults to hair analysis. One really good example of that is the Madrid Train Bombings. Do you remember this one?
I do.
Yes. So in Madrid, Spain, on March 11th, 2004, beginning around 7:30 in the morning, bombs started going off all on various trains throughout the city. lasting about 10 minutes. It was a huge operation. Almost 200 people died and almost 2,000 people were injured. The event occurred just 3 days before Spain's elections, so it quickly led investigators to believe that the attacks were politically charged. The Spanish government believed that it had to do something with the ETA, which is an acronym for a phrase I cannot say, just because I don't know how. But it's not that it's like I won't say it. It's a bad word.
Yeah, for a minute I was like, woo, spicy. Nope, just can't say it.
No, I just literally physically can't. It's a Basque separationist organization. It's basically a terrorist group.
Here's a little known Lillian fact.
What?
My ancestors come from the Basque region.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
Most people in the Basque region are Rh negative. So if you are Rh negative, it is likely you have Basque descendants.
I am.
You're welcome. They're very interesting and unique people.
Aryans. That's what everybody thinks.
They're not aliens.
Well, Rh negative, not Basque. I'm just saying.
But they wear funny hats.
Well, this organization is not something that you want
not
to be a part
good.
of. No. They had been wreaking havoc on Spain for over 30 years. They were responsible for 800 deaths during that time. The days following the train bombings, there were protests and social outcries for justice. Over 11 million people participated in demonstrations across the country against violence in the city and urged the government to find those people responsible and put an end to their fears and sufferings. Remember, this is 2004. During the wake of 9/11, the, quote, war on terrorism is in full swing. The Patriot Act was just signed, and everything is just pure chaos. Al-Qaeda is the boogeyman. Saddam Hussein could literally be hiding anywhere. And there was a huge fear amongst white America of Muslims in general. It was not a good time to be brown or anything other than Christian. For sure.
Still not.
Still not. But I mean, especially around this time, there was a big fear and people were violent in their fear.
That is correct. Yeah.
I remember it was very scary for any of my Middle Eastern friends at this time.
I remember that shit. And
Anybody wearing a turban or any type of head covering.
I remember after 9/11 when they would like go after Sikhs and it's like, it's a different religion. You all are just stupid.
Yes, absolutely. I know.
Remember when people wanted to call them freedom fries?
Yeah.
Kill me.
I wish I didn't remember that.
It made me so mad. Freedom fries. Fuck off.
Now, this event to Spain, March 11th's bombings were the equivalent of their 9/11, which they called M11. Now, citizens wanted the bombers brought to justice before they voted. They would actually like hold these signs during their protests that was basically like saying, you know, you better find these guys before we vote. Like, we don't want to vote until you press charges and get these criminals off our streets because
sense.
Because we don't know. Yeah.
You can't have a society that feels free and safe to vote if you think you're going to get exploded when you go to the ballot.
Exactly.
It's intimidation tactics. That's why terrorism is a thing.
That's right. Now, investigators found a bag that had contained detonation devices, and on that bag was
fingerprints.
Something I didn't realize until researching this episode is that, at least at this point in time, because again, I wanted to kind of stay with the times. I didn't really want to look into fingerprint analysis from today standards because I wanted to look at it from this point of view because that's what they had, right?
Right.
So at this point in time, because I'm just really hoping that it's improved since then. Now, at this point in time, fingerprint experts would digitally mark by hand spots on the fingerprint ridges and variations, like particular indicators. Then they would send that into CODIS, and CODIS would like basically, or it was like a CODIS-like system. And it would basically electronically file through all of the server's fingerprints on record and then produce a list of possible suspects that might match that fingerprint based off those markers that the analyst marked. So you're not actually taking a fingerprint, putting it in a machine and having a non-bias, you know,
right,
a computer analyzing. it's kind of a human, computer, and then human again analyzation system. So lots of spaces for errors. Now, then a specialist would analyze everything and analyze everyone on that list, compare those, and then,
make a determination.
Yeah, it's not like CSI by any means.
No, it's not like my favorite thing about CSI or any shows where they're like, zoom in, enhance. And I'm like, y'all, CCTV is grainy. You're just going to see pixels. You're not you're like looking into a butthole.
You're
not
get to enhance. That's not
what do you mean enhance? We're not on the Star Trek Enterprise. Wish we were.
Carl.
They don't have money in Star Trek's universe and everybody's happy.
Oh shit, they don't.
No, they don't.
And all their pants fit perfect.
That's right.
All right.
And they have a holodeck. You can fuck anybody you want on the holodeck. They have food replicators, my dude. You feel it? You got a mouth witch? You just go, computer, shit me out some sushi. And it's just like...
Stop it.
Yes, Captain. I'm a captain now. Yes, Captain. That's what happens. Why can't I have this?
I'm really sad now. You just made me sad.
Go on.
Well, so the United States government, or the FBI, got involved with this case when several American citizens popped up on this list, and the experts found that what was filed as latent fingerprint 17, so LF 17, they found a match to them, to a man in Portland, Oregon.
That's far.
Just, Brandon Mayfield was a U.S. Army veteran and a family law attorney who mostly worked with low-income clients, mostly people of color. Now, how the fuck did a lawyer in Portland have anything to do with a crime in Spain?
Right?
He didn't.
Of course not.
Like, he fucking didn't. Like, he just didn't.
Just straight up did not.
He just straight up did not. But the FBI were just convinced with their preconceived notions about their suspect profile that they had collected data to fit the narrative of their profile. So this is just a classic case of confirmation bias.
Yeah, obviously.
It's really, really sloppy, too. So Brandon Mayfield was a U.S. Army veteran, so that was kind of one of their boxes to check. Somebody that was, had trained in armed forces, had military background, that kind of thing. He also lived in Portland, which months prior to this incident in December of 2003, there were 7 people charged with engaging a conspiracy to join Al-Qaeda and Taliban forces. Now, Brandon Mayfield, remember, he's a lawyer for low-income, mostly people of color in Portland. Now, though he's a very white-sounding name, he had just converted to Islam.
Oh, no. Bad timing.
Yeah. Not that Islam is a bad religion. I don't like any religions, but Islam's not a bad religion. It's just...
It's not any worse than any of the other ones.
It is Christianity with just a different language, but whatever. Now, not only had he defended suspected terrorists in court as his job as a defense attorney, which he would also later explain. I have linked it was kind of a press conference, kind of just like a meeting that they had taped, and he sits and talks, and I would love for you guys to hear how he speaks, because he is so meek and he's not small, but he's just very kind sounding. I don't know. It doesn't sound like somebody who would bomb trains. He actually explained that one of these clients that they were saying were terrorists, that they were trying to say, oh, he defends terrorists. There was a mix-up with the suspect's children. So the father had gone into prison, and the children needed to go to the right home, so that way they were taken care of. And he had actually was the attorney for the children and had worked out to make sure they were going, that the mother was okay and was a right home and all of this stuff. So it's like they're pointing all the wrong fingers at this guy. They're like, you defend terrorists, and he's like, no, I defend children. Like,
right?
You know, it was just really silly. Now, one thing that they tried to use as just absolute evidence, his passport hadn't been renewed in years. And instead of them thinking that, like, you know, like a normal person, like you or I would see that and say, oh, his passport is expired. He didn't leave the country. Right. There's his solid alibi. Right. He's never even fucking been to Spain. No, they were like, aha, this proves it.
Gotcha.
He's had a false identity, and he's been using a different passport for years.
Lord have mercy.
You're like, well, fucking find it, you know? Just find it then. No, he hadn't. This guy is so humble. So yeah, and you know, this is the type of evidence that should never be 100% relied on. There needs to be like a certain amount of additional evidence, both circumstantial and hard evidence paired with forensic analysis. They all kind of need to be, I feel like there should be some rules or regulations or something for people that are much, you know, more intelligent than me to put into place. But I just feel like we shouldn't be allowing, you know, just single bits of what we call evidence to convict somebody. I feel like there should be at least like kind of like a trifecta of hard evidence, forensic evidence, and then paired with circumstantial evidence. I feel like you need circumstantial evidence.
Otherwise, I don't know the fucking circumstances.
How else do I know how you got there? Why you were there? You know, without circumstantial evidence, how is he on that train in Spain? He's
exactly.
not. Exactly. Because he's not. And they do this a lot with like fiber evidence. They'll be like, aha, his fiber here. And it's like, well, maybe not. I don't know.
Maybe yes, but maybe fucking no.
Was a lot of other evidence of his at the scene as well. That's the thing that you need to look for. It needs to tie together. It needs to be a woven tapestry of evidence, not just a fucking strand. You know, do your job. So the fucked up part is that Brandon Mayfield's own defense experts agreed that the prints were a match. His own defense experts. So when you throw that word expert in there, nobody's going to believe you. Everybody's going to believe them. Yep. Several experts said that his prints were a match. Yet his own daughter saw the prints. I saw the prints. We saw the prints as like normal, generic people with our naked eye, with no training, no fucking, you know, examination tools or whatever.
And we're like,
You can clearly see that these are not the same fingerprints. It's really ridiculous. But with so many experts and the entire FBI against him, on May 6th, 2004, Brandon Mayfield, this very calm and peaceful and timid man, was arrested and put into prison for not just a crime that he didn't commit, but an act of terrorism.
Damn.
And it just kind of came out of nowhere.
That's so scary.
It really is that the FBI can just fucking do this to you without any rhyme or reason. Now, an FBI report later said, like it was released later, said that Brandon Mayfield was one of 20 potential matches for LF-17. One of 20. And it was only because of these other things that they thought, you know, were, you know, crucial to his outline that they got him for it. But the second that they saw Brandon Mayfield's work history and his religion, they started to zero in on him. Brandon started to feel like he was being watched. He was constantly looking over his shoulder. He thought that people were breaking into his house, even though he couldn't find anything that they were stealing. He just kept finding evidence that people were breaking into his house.
That's so fucked up.
Because they were breaking into his house and they were watching him. They had basically done just like in the movies. The FBI were following him everywhere, going through his trash, collecting drink cups and following him to work and the grocery store, watching him through his window, wiretapping his phone, wiretapping and bugging his house. They had full FBI surveillance on him from the second they suspected him until the moment he was arrested. Now, the thing with this is that they just gathered so much evidence and anything they could use to skew this story and manipulate it into their direction, they would use.
Gross.
It's almost like whenever people are like, see, smoking weed is bad. Smoking weed, these people did this and they smoked weed. Well, it's like a million people smoke weed, you know? It's like they found like the smallest, most minuscule of evidence and would try to twist it against him. So at first they detained him as a quote unquote material witness because they needed far less evidence to do that.
That is true.
Than get him on like an actual charge. And then once they detained him, then they thought, oh, now we'll gather more evidence and we'll really get him this time. Now,
stupid.
Some of the evidence that they gathered from his home. So after they arrested him, they went into his home and they seized everything, like everything. It was stupid, including quote unquote Spanish documents that they just were like, oh, this is terrorism, Spanish documents. You know what it was?
The Duolingo owl? No, I don't know.
No, his kid's Spanish homework.
The equivalent of the Duolingo owl.
Yes, exactly. So at first they wouldn't tell Brandon or his family why he was being arrested. They literally just arrested him. They wouldn't allow him to talk to his family. They would barely allow him to talk to any legal counsel whatsoever, if any at all. And he was given a false name when they took him into the county jail, and then he was transferred to an unidentified location.
That's not due process.
Like fucking creepy. Fucking creepy, dude. Luckily, the Spanish government was much more equipped to handle this mess. They collected other backpacks, other ski masks, like they actually collected evidence. And various items that belonged to both the bombers and parts of the explosives that were detonated. 4 of the potential suspects died in a suicide car bombing. Witnesses saw several leaving the scene too, so several escaped. There were 166,000 inspections conducted throughout the country between March of 2004 and November of 2004. Like they were working hard. They were actually doing work. About 2,500 violations were discovered and over 3 tons of explosives, 11 kilometers of detonation cord, and over 15,000 detonators were seized.
Damn.
What the actual fuck?
That's a big concerted
that is such
operation.
A huge operation. Like that makes me kind of want to puke a little bit. But good job, Spanish government. You guys got them. Now, on May 19th, the Spanish authorities announced that the LF-17 fingerprint actually belonged to an Algerian national named Unain Daoud, along with almost 30 other suspects, most of them with ties to domestic terrorist organizations. And of the 28 defendants that stood trial, 21 were convicted. And then Brandon Mayfield was let go.
Well, of course he was, because that was stupid.
Isn't that stupid? And it's like, it's so just like swept under the rug. Like, I'm sure it's so embarrassing to them.
It's almost a pseudoscience if we're not doing it all via computer, which won't make a mistake. Right. The switching between computer to human to computer to human, that's where you get your confirmation bias and shit like that. And
the fact that you're not analyzing more than one print. You're just taking one smudged print and that's it. You have to kind of compare through a lot of samples.
Yes.
And that's why you see investigations. I forgot which one it was, but I covered one recently where they dusted the entire room for prints. They took blood samples from every single fucking one because every little blood splatter could be potentially somebody else's blood. You don't know for sure.
You have to test it.
Or it could be mixed with somebody else's blood. And when blood is mixed together, that's a whole nother fiasco.
Yes, it is.
But yeah, it's just one of those, it's sloppy. So it's like, okay, yeah, fingerprint analysis is 100%. Yeah, sure. Whatever. But it's the human
error component.
Yeah. In the record keeping.
It's almost like if we could stop being racist for 5 minutes.
Really though.
But I'm not even going to.
I know.
I'm not even going to go there today.
And that's why we can't have nice things. And that's why, this story really sparked that fascination with cases where people are wrongly convicted. And, we find ways to kind of just like seek justice and get them out of there.
I get so mad at those cases.
I get mad at them too, but I don't know. I'm kind of fascinated by them because I want justice for people. One of these days we'll have to do a month on it. We'll let the patrons vote and decide on that. But wrongful convictions really get me riled up, make me want to fight people.
Me too. You know what doesn't make me want to fight people?
Girl.
Business time. I did it. It's a good transition. Brain soup today, so I'm going to keep this pretty short.
Brain soup. We got some really great merch, girl.
That's right. Is your brain soup? Do you want to let everybody know that it is?
Don't talk to me. My brain is soup.
Talk. Yeah. Go to our link tree because that t-shirt design is available now. Yep. And go check it out before we move to a smaller business to be handling all of our t-shirts.
I'm so excited.
Right? I'm excited too.
Mom's the word.
We're not going to say anymore. Patreon. So my next case I'm covering on Patreon, which I'll be recording this weekend, is over serial killer Mary Bell, only 11 years old.
Yeah.
And it's a really messed up case, but I just think it's interesting. Kind of the question of nature versus nurture.
Right.
And I don't know if there's anything scarier than a kid that just comes out bad.
No.
It's just pitiful to me. It's so sad and creepy.
Yes.
Yeah, so come check out our Patreon.
You can't hurt them back.
If you become a patron this month in the $5 and up tier, I will enter you into a drawing for a huge gift box that will contain something from both Willow, me, and Maris.
I'm making something for you guys.
You're making stuff.
That's right.
And it's going to be cool. Retail value of at least $200. Speaking of other things that have a high value, I am trying to get rid of all of my inventory because I'm moving into spooky season making soap and jewelry and stuff. So I'm doing mystery boxes. Now, I've already offered them to my patrons, get a discount. But if you are a just regular listener, for $50, I will send you a giant box of stuff, and it will have art, jewelry, possibly perfume, candles, soap, lotion bars, bath bombs, all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. And it will value anywhere from $150 all the way to $300. So if you want one of those, please know that supplies are super duper limited. I probably will not have any by the end of the week. I think I only have 3 mystery boxes left. I mean, I have to count.
Girl, you better get on
So I will put my email in the comments if you would like one, and you can message me. These are going to be all my summer scents, so these are all very light florals, and they're, spring scents, spring, summer, whatever. They're very light florals and some more woodsy, kind of gender-neutral fragrances. My candles are oddwood and rose, and then I have some that are night blooming jasmine. Beautiful fragrances, just sexy and very gorgeous.
Yes, it's a new moon tonight, so
I'm feeling it. Yeah. I'm feeling it. So if you're wanting one of those, please jump on it. I love doing mystery boxes. They're so fun. I really pack them full. I pack them full of goodies.
And if you get one, do an unboxing video because those always help.
Yeah. If you wanna, you don't certainly have to, but that would be rad.
Great.
Also, are you a small business? Would you like to sponsor this podcast? Well, you just email either me or Willow, and we will set you up with all of that because we want to help small businesses. And we're a small business.
We gain new listeners almost every day.
Yes,
it's been kind of a slow but steady incline. So just know that if you do want to become our sponsors, there's more and more people will be listening every day.
Are you a big business? Would you like to sponsor this podcast? Whip it out, baby. I'm ready. Take a shot to the eye. I don't care. That was gross.
For those of you that obviously don't know about podcasting, it's really hard to find sponsors. I know a lot of people get really lucky.
I don't even know where to look. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So there's that. But we're kind of at the numbers now where that will probably happen. So if you want to avoid those incoming ads, get on our Patreon.
Yeah, ad-free listens on Patreon. And if you can't afford any of the higher tiers, we have a $1 tier, so you can get all of our regular episodes, plus the occasional commentary episodes ad-free.
Which we'll be recording one this weekend, so that's very exciting. And the last thing is I'm running, by popular demand, because so many of you asked because you missed the sale the first time, I'm running a special on my tarot readings and Maris's 8x10 original watercolor painting star charts. He will pick a day of your choice. It can be a birthday, anniversary, whatever day. He will illustrate the position of the stars in kind of an old-timey way. Go on to his Instagram. You can see examples. They're very celestial. They're beautiful, and they make an amazing gift. I cried last year when I got one for my birthday. It's so pretty. And I will do a full tarot card reading for you for $45. It's an art and a really cool reading. It makes a really good gift. If you want to gift a reading to someone, can absolutely do that. Like, you have a friend making terrible decisions
with that guy you don't like.
And they keep saying, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to get this bitch a tarot card.
Lillian is the perfect person for that job.
Yes.
Me. I know.
Yeah, you do. But I've been reading tarot for almost 30 years. I love doing it. I feel like, I don't know, I feel very in tune with the cards. So hit me up if you've never had a tarot reading before. They're so fun.
Yeah. And she'll give you a full email readout of it.
Oh, it's like 2 to 5 pages, depending. Because sometimes I get really into it and I got to pull extra cards because the universe tell me things. But if all you can do to support this podcast is listen, please know how much I appreciate it. And I know business time isn't, I don't mind if you skip through it, because I probably would.
Right, I would too.
But if you didn't, oh my goodness, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the recommendations, y'all. Y'all have been recommending us
some really good cases recently.
Well, I'm saying, like, when people ask for podcast recommendations.
Yeah, that too.
You'll either tag us in it or it'll just pop up.
I love that. It makes me feel really nice.
It really does. I just know that if anybody's like, hey, do you have a podcast recommendation? And then you say, I love Cruelty Podcast. Just know that somewhere in the hills of Arkansas,
we've noticed
there's this little hobbit little thing that's blushing her fucking head off.
Oh, I'm not blushing, but I'm just going, hey.
She doesn't blush. I blush.
No, I'm a Virgo. We don't do that. We go to the bathroom in private.
I faint from blushing.
You're ridiculous.
True. It's really bad.
If you've ever, you think, oh, that's so cute, but in person, you kind of just want to, dot her eyes, man. Just pow, pow, pow. What the fuck is wrong with you? Stop. But that's just me. I know I talk big. I'm actually a big softie, but don't let anyone in on that. Okay, so I'm going to go now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Us on your social media platform of choice. Linktree/Cruelty has all of the links. Check out our Patreon for exclusive episodes, merch, ad-free episodes, live ghost hunts, and much more. Please be sure to subscribe. New episodes are uploaded weekly. Thank you so much. See you next time. Music and production by Libby.